Welcome to Chapter 4, Part B. I apologize for my health. It's not that great, and I can't always read. I try, but this time I got myself into a real funk, a real depression. It's a year coming up. A year since I got sick. So, I'm going through some things. That doesn't stop us from learning. I think I'll do a separate live. I've lost a subscriber, and I don't blame them. I'm not entertaining. It's not what I'm here for. I'm here to read. Alright, beginning. The old propagandist based his work on the mechanistic reaction psychology. On the mechanistic reaction psychology then in vogue in our colleges. This assumed that the human mind was merely an individual machine, a system of nerves and nerve centers, reacting with mechanical regularity to stimuli, like a helpless, will-less automaton. It was the special pleader's function to provide the stimulus which would cause the desired reaction in the individual purchaser. It was one of the doctrines of the reaction psychology that a certain stimulus often repeated would create a habit, or that the mere reiteration of an idea would create a conviction. Suppose the old type of salesmanship, acting for a meat packer, was seeking to increase the sale of bacon. It would reiterate innumerable times in full-page advertisements, "Eat more bacon! Eat bacon because it's cheap! Eat it because it's good! Because it gives you reserve energy!" The newer salesmanship, understanding the group structure of society and principles of mass psychology, would first ask, who is it that influences the eating habits of the world? The answer, obviously, is the physicians. A new salesman will then suggest to physicians to say publicly that it is wholesome to eat bacon. He knows as a mathematical certainty that large numbers of persons will follow the advice of their doctors because he understands the psychological relation of dependence of men upon their physicians. The old-fashioned propagandist, using almost exclusively the appeal of the printed word, tried to persuade the individual reader to buy a definite article immediately. This approach is exemplified in a type of advertisement which used to be considered ideal from the point of view of directness and effectiveness. You! Or perhaps the finger pointing at the reader. Buy O'Leary's rubber heels, now! The advertiser sought by means of reiteration that and emphasis directed upon the individual to break down or penetrate sales resistance. Although the appeal was aimed at 50 million persons, it was aimed at each as an individual. The new salesmanship has found it possible, by dealing with men in the mass through their group formations, to set up a psychological and emotional currents which will work for him. Instead of assaulting sales resistance by direct attack, he is interested in removing sales resistance. He creates circumstances which will swing emotional currents so as to make for purchaser demand. What is this like? This is like Starbucks and their seasonal cup going on right now. They're getting a lot of attention and people are lining up to get the cups, but they only have 3 cups available, or that that circumstances which will swing emotional currents by these people lining up the way they are. It's creating a hype, which is creating a fever to get these. And so that's one of the ways that this is happening. It happens repeatedly, like the Cabbage Doll phenomenon, Cabbage Patch Kids, which is my generation. Your generation is Stanley Cups and things of that nature. There you go. So he creates circumstances which will swing emotional currents so as to make the purchaser demand. Influencers. If, for instance, I want to sell pianos, it is not sufficient to blanket the country with the direct appeal such as, "You! Buy a Mozart piano! It is cheap! The best artists use it and it'll last for years!" The claims may all be true, but they are in direct conflict with the claims of other popular piano manufacturers, and in direct competition with the claims of a radio or a motor car, each competing for the consumer's dollar. What are the true reasons the purchaser is planning to spend his money on a new car instead of a new piano? Because he has decided that he wants the commodity called locomotion more than he wants the commodity called music? Not altogether. He buys a car because it is at the moment the group accustomed to buy cars. The modern propagandist therefore sets to work to create circumstances which will modify that custom. He appeals perhaps to the home instinct, which is fundamental. He will endeavor to develop public appearance of the idea of a music room in the home. This he may do, for example, by organizing an expedition of period music rooms designed by well-known decorators who themselves exert an influence on the buying groups. Come restock my toddler's kitchen, or whatever they restock. Please get ready with me. All these things we do. We're probably just puppets used by the machine to keep consumerism alive. Gotta do a study. There's a difference between consumerism and capitalism. Okay. Let's do it. Let's get a music room, kids. Let's get a music room. Do. He enhances the effectiveness and prestige of these rooms by putting in them rare and valuable tapestries. Then, in order to create dramatic interest in the exhibit, he stages an event or ceremony or Ralph Lauren Christmas. To this ceremony, key people, persons known to influence the buying habits of the public, such as a famous violinist, a popular artist, and a society leader, are invited. These key people affect other groups, lifting the idea of the music room to a place in the public consciousness which we would not have had before. The juxtaposition of these leaders and the idea which they are dramatizing are then projected to the whole wider public through various publicity channels. Like Sephora. I'm just saying, all your TikTok is the most mass doingness of this technique. Meanwhile, influential architects have been persuaded to make the music room an integral architectural part of their plans, with perhaps a especially charming niche in one corner for the piano. Less influential architects will, as a matter of course, imitate what is done by the men whom they consider masters of their profession. They, in turn, will implant the idea of a music room in the mind of the general public. The music room will be accepted because it has been made the thing, and the man or woman who has a music room or who has arranged a corner of the parlor as a musical corner will naturally think of buying a piano. It will come to him as his own idea. Under the old salesmanship, the manufacturer said to the prospective purchaser, "Please buy a piano." The new salesmanship has reversed the process and caused the prospective purchaser to say to the manufacturer, "Please sell me a piano." The value of the associative process in propaganda is shown in connection with the large real estate development. To emphasize that Jackson Heights was socially desirable, every attempt was made to produce this associative process. A benefit performance of the jitney players was staged for the benefit of the earthquake victims of Japan, under the auspices of Mrs. Astor and others. The social advantages of the place were projected. A golf course was laid out and a clubhouse planned. When the post office was open, the Public Relations Council attempted to use it as a focus for national interest and discovered that its opening fell coincident with a date important in the annals of the American Postal Service. This was then made the basis of the opening. So they got the people who owned the Jackson Heights that was trying to sell you the apartments. They got them to do good stuff, benefit charities. Social advantages of the place were protected. So they thought people in a golf course, people in a clubhouse, and then they set up the post office to come walking in there and setting up business to make this a real town. And they happened to find out that the post office, the day that they were opening this post office, was like the day the Pony Express started. You know, it was some benefit. It was some day that was special to the history of the post office. Oh yeah. So then they just turned that into the party. Hey, on this great and glorious Pony Express Day, we're opening this whole town. Yay! That's what that's all about. And it was made the basis for the opening. When an attempt was made to show the public the beauty of the apartments, a competition was held among interior decorators for the best furnished apartment in Jackson Heights. An important committee of judges decided. This competition drew the approval of well-known authorities, as well as the interests of millions, who were made cognizant of it through newspaper and magazine and other publicity, with the effect of building up definitely large prestige of the development. So definitely the prestige of the development. One of the most effective methods is the utilization of group formation of modern society in order to spread ideas. Excuse me. An example of this is the nationwide competitions for sculpture and ivory soap, open to school children in certain age groups as well as professional sculptors. A sculptor of national reputation found ivory soap an excellent medium for sculpture. The Procter & Gamble Company offered a series of prizes for the best sculpture in white soap. The contest was held under the auspices of the Art Center in New York City, an organization of high standing in the art world. Superintendents and teachers throughout the country were glad to encourage the movement as an educational aid for schools. Practice among school children as part of their art courses was stimulated. Contests were held between schools, between school districts and cities. Ivory soap was adaptable for sculpting in the homes because mothers shaved the shavings and imperfect efforts for laundry purposes, and the imperfect efforts for laundry purposes. So you can use the soap you shaved for the carving, and you're not wasting it because you're putting it in your laundry. The work itself is clean. The best pieces are selected from the local competitions for entry in the national contest. This was held on annually at an important art gallery whose prestige was... Hold on, I'm having a time warp. I don't think they do it anymore. And I vaguely remember hearing something about it when I was a kid, but I don't know if it's so. Obviously, it was done before the 50s. So this is, he said, is held annually at an important art gallery in New York, whose prestige, with that of the distinguished judges, establishes the contest as a very serious art event. In the first of these national competitions, about 500 pieces of sculpture were entered. In the third, 2,500. And in the fourth, more than 4,000. If the carefully selected pieces were so numerous, it is evident that a vast number were sculptured during the year, and that a much greater number must have been made for practice purposes. Much more have been used as the duds. The goodwill was greatly enhanced by the fact that this soap had become not merely the concern of the housewife, but also a matter of personal and intimate interest to her children. A number of familiar psychological motives were set in motion in the carrying out of this campaign. The athletic, the competitive, the gregarious. Much of the sculpting was done in school groups. The snobbish, the impulse to follow the example of a recognized leader. The exhibitionists. And, last but by no means least, the maternal. All these motives and group habits were put into concert motion by the simple machinery of group leadership and authority. As if, actuated by the pressure of a button, people began working for the sake of the gratification obtained in the sculpting work itself. This point is most important in successful propaganda work. The leaders who lend their authority to any propaganda campaign will do so only if it can be made to touch their own interests. There must be a disinterested aspect of the propagandist's activities. In other words, it is one of the functions of the Public Relations Council to discover at what points his client's interests coincide with those of other individuals or groups. In the case of the soap sculpture competition, the distinguished artists and educators who sponsored the idea were glad to lend their services and their names because the competitions really promoted an interest which they had at heart, the cultivation of the aesthetic impulse among the younger generation. Aesthetic, not athletic. The aesthetic, the competitive, the gregarious, but I don't know what the word aesthetic means. I'm not going to look it up because my phone's not near me. Where's my phone? Oh, my phone's here. I bet you've already looked it up. You're so fast. We're not going to take time to do that. But I'll look it up later. Such coincidence and overlapping of interests is as infinite as the interlacing group of forms. Such coincidence and overlapping of interests is as infinite as the interlacing groups of formations themselves. For example, a railway wishes to develop its business. The Council on Public Relations makes a survey to discover at what points its interests coincide with those of its prospective customers. What the heck's going on, boo? Oh. The company then established relations with chambers of commerce along its right-of-way and assists them in developing their communities. It helps them to secure new plants and industries for the town. It facilitates business through the dissemination of technical, oh goody, we're almost done, information. Like I said, I'm sorry for my health. But I have a legacy to leave behind. Drink water. Don't eat processed foods. Take care of your high blood pressure. Exercise. And don't get angry. That's most important. It is not merely a case of bestowing favors in the hope of receiving favors. These activities of the railroad, besides creating goodwill, actually promote growth on its right-of-way. The interests of the railroad and the communities through which it passes mutually interact and feed one another. In the same way, bank institutes and investment services for the service boom. In the same way, bank institutes and investment service for the benefit of its customers in order that the latter may have more money to deposit in the bank. Or a jewelry concern develops an insurance department to insure the jewels it sells, in order to make the purchaser feel greater security in buying jewels. Or a banking company establishes information service suggesting recipes for bread to encourage users. Baking company, not a banking company. A baking company establishes an information service suggesting recipes for bread to encourage new uses for bread in the home. The ideas of the new propaganda are predicated on sound psychology based on enlightened self-interest. I have tried, in these chapters, to explain the place of propaganda in modern American life and something of the methods by which it operates, to tell the why, the what, the who, and the how of the invisible government, which dictates our thoughts, directs our feelings, and controls our actions. MK Ultra. In the following chapters, I shall try to show how propaganda functions in specific departments of group activity, to suggest some of the further ways in which it may operate. And that'll be chapter 5. I get worn out quickly.